My name is Michael. I'm a senior in college, about to graduate, and luckily, I received a job offer before summer, so I'm working part-time at a leisurely patch while living in my parents' home. However, my mom is strict, so I anticipate she'll nag me, saying, "Michael, don't just lie around. Isn't there something you should be preparing for your new job?" To prepare for my new role in sales, I've started reading books on sales techniques, making the most of my time. As a solo traveler, I spent a few days abroad, interacting with people from various countries. I've often found my strict mom to be a hassle since I was young, but recently, I've started to feel a bit grateful for her ways. On a certain summer day, a memory always comes back to me around this season. I wonder if it was this hot on the day I met him. That day, as I left my house, planning to go to the library, these thoughts crossed my mind. Then, my attention was drawn to a fancy black car parked in front of an apartment near my home. Glancing over, I saw a man in a black suit, despite the heat, wearing a flashy shirt, standing next to the car. It appeared that he was looking my way. Why here, a gangster, probably. This apartment is old. Maybe they are planning to demolish it for a hideout. That's a bit sad and scary. The apartment, unoccupied for a long while, holds some sentimental value for me. Well, I should just leave quickly. Thinking this, I hurried away, but then I heard a man's deep voice saying, "Excuse me." With just the gangster and me around, it was clear who was speaking to whom. Why me? Wanting to run but afraid of being chased, I had no choice but to turn and respond. "Jess, what is it?" I replied, avoiding eye contact. Then, the man calmly said, "I'm looking for someone." Are they looking for someone dangerous? I haven't seen anyone like that around here. While thinking this, all I could do was listen and respond with, "I'm looking for someone named Mr. Johnson." Hearing this, I froze. Johnson, that's my family, but I have no idea why a gangster would be looking for us. Is there another Johnson family I don't know about? Unsure of what to say, my confusion was apparent. Seeing my reaction, the gangster leaned in to look at my face. Scary. But I haven't done anything wrong. As I stood frozen, he asked, "Are you Michael Johnson?" Hearing my name, my heart almost leaped out of my chest, but the gangster's eyes behind his sunglasses didn't seem too menacing, which calmed me down a bit. Then he took off his sunglasses and said, "It's me, David. David Smith. Do you remember me?" Dave. Hearing that, I was even more surprised. Because he was the very person I had been thinking about until just a moment ago. Going back 15 years, to one summer. Back then, I was a timid, quiet 7-year-old boy. I had friends, but not many. I wasn't bullied, but I would rather read books in the classroom than play in the schoolyard. So, I only saw Dave, a big, silent boy from another class, as scary. Not just me, probably most kids at that time avoided him, thinking the same. I never thought I'd interact with him. But one day, on my way home from school, eager to show my mom the family portrait I drew in class, I was running with the drawing in hand. But I stumbled on a small stone and fell, accidentally letting go of the drawing paper. The drawing paper was swept away by the wind, crossing over the riverbank right next to me and heading towards the river. I panicked and chased after it, but couldn't make it in time, and the paper fell into the river. Fortunately, it didn't sink and was just floating on the surface of the water. I decided to go get it and stepped into the river. Just then, a loud voice called out from the riverbank, "Hey, what are you doing?" Startled, I looked up to see Dave standing there. Surprised to be addressed, I watched as Dave quickly descended the riverbank to stand beside me. After I explained the situation, Dave said, "You're short, so I'll go get it," and waded into the river. Even Dave, who I estimate is about 20 centimeters taller than me, was in water up to his knees, so it might have been quite dangerous for me. I expressed my gratitude to Dave when he safely returned with the painting. The painting was a bit waterlogged but still recognizable. After that, it turned out Dave was heading the same way home, so we walked back together for the first time. I was a bit happy to know that Dave, who doesn't stand out much, was aware of me. Simple as I am, that alone made me feel a closeness to Dave and a desire to befriend him. Though reticent, Dave didn't ignore me and answered each question I asked. "What kind of painting did you make, Dave?" I was referring to the family painting he had just picked up. Dave showed me the painting without much change in expression. It depicted a man with a beard, wearing green clothes. "Your father?" When I asked that, Dave just nodded. I was a bit surprised. In my family painting, I had drawn myself, my mom, and my dad. I had always thought family meant drawing everyone. So, I was shocked to see that Dave's painting didn't even include himself. Looking back, this was a reflection of Dave's home environment, but I was too oblivious at the time to notice. After that, Dave and I grew closer, eventually walking to and from school together. As we moved up in grades and ended up in the same class, our friendship deepened even more. The closer I got to Dave, the more I noticed him being avoided by our classmates. It seems that apart from my perception of him as big and scary, there was also an impression of him being poor and dirty. Indeed, it seemed like Dave only had about 2 outfits. That's why they were pilled and had small holes in them. Honestly, I hadn't really noticed until Dave started coming over to my house, and then my mom pointed it out. She said to Dave, "Could you lend me that t-shirt for a moment?" Dave looked puzzled by her words, but after he took off his t-shirt, my mom dressed him in one of my dad's t-shirts. She then brought out her sewing kit, and I immediately understood what she was planning to do. She was mending the holes in the t-shirt. By the time Dave was ready to leave, the t-shirt had been neatly repaired. "Look at you, even more handsome now." After Dave put on the mended t-shirt, my mom playfully patted his back and said with a beaming smile. Dave seemed really happy, and seeing that made me happy too. I later learned that Dave lived with his father in a single-parent household. His dad worked as a construction worker and left early in the morning, returning only late at night. His dad never cooked, so their meals were mostly takeout. Moreover, since Dave was usually asleep by the time his dad got home, he'd eat the takeout pizza for breakfast and have school lunch for midday. They often skipped dinner. That was their usual routine. After hearing this from Dave, my mom started making extra dinner for him every day. Growing up as an only child, I was thrilled to feel like I had a sibling, and Dave was delighted too, his eyes shining as he exclaimed, "Can I really have all this treat?" However, Mom wasn't always this kind. Gradually, she even started nagging Dave just like she did with me. "Michael, Dave, did you do your homework?" In my room, as usual, the two of us were playing video games when Mom came in and asked. "Not yet. We'll do it later," we said, reluctantly, putting off our homework. Mom said, "Don't keep putting things off. It's better to get what needs to be done out of the way first, so you can enjoy your fun times." Hearing that, I grudgingly took out my textbooks from my backpack. But Dave said, "I'll do it when I get home," and kept his eyes on the game. Then Mom stood in front of the TV like a guardian deity and said, "You won't do it when you're alone. It's quicker when you two work together. Dave, come on, get out your textbook." Intimidated by Mom's forcefulness, Dave weakly responded, "Okay," and stopped playing the game to start on his homework. This was how we spent our time, just like a real family. I always thought we would continue to spend time together like this. I guess I had always assumed it, but it was the summer when we were in 5th grade. Dave was moving away from his busy dad's place to live with his grandpa in a distant town. We all considered Dave a part of our family, but we couldn't object to the decision made by his real family. On the first day of summer vacation, I could only say goodbye to Dave, who came to bid us farewell, holding back my tears. Mom, tears streaming down her face, hugged Dave and said, "Your place is always here with us. We are always on your side, Dave. You'll be fine wherever you go. You can live strongly and kindly. I guarantee it." Dave was looking down, perhaps crying as well. Finally, I managed to say to Dave, "Make sure you come back, okay?" as I watched his tall figure walk away. Then, during winter and spring breaks, Dave came to visit, but after that, we lost touch for 15 years, leaving me completely unaware of how he was doing. Seeing Dave in front of me, I was filled with disbelief before even feeling happy. "It's great to see you're doing well," I said. Dave smiled back, his face marked with vivid scars, but it was still unmistakably him. "You too," I replied. Then he asked, "Is your mom doing well? I came today to express my gratitude to Michael's family." "Yes, she's fine. She's actually at home now, so let's go together," I suggested. I was urged to get into Dave's car and nervously settled into the luxurious vehicle, parking it nearby. Riding in Dave's car for the first time, I was struck by its urban scent, a vivid reminder of how time has passed. From there, it took just a few minutes to reach my house. Because it had been remodeled, the house's exterior looked quite different from before, which made Dave say, "That's why I didn't recognize it." As I opened the door, Mom, noticing our arrival, came out and said, "Back so soon from the library, did you forget something?" She then saw Dave standing behind me, looking surprised and pausing for a moment. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if the man behind me was indeed Dave. "It's been a long time. I'm David," Dave introduced himself, just as he had done to me. Dave introduced himself to me in the same manner. "Really, Dave? Come on in," Mom exclaimed, clearly recognizing him. It seemed that Mom had indeed realized who he was. Encouraged by Mom, we headed to the living room. There, Dave shared with us the story of his life since the day we had parted. In the city he moved to, the middle school students were much rougher than anything we could imagine here. When Dave became a middle schooler, his tall and intimidating appearance made him a target. Dave himself never had the desire to become strong or to fight, but in school, he continued to be avoided and feared, just as in elementary school. The only people who approached him were those with similar intimidating looks, involved in bad activities. Haunted by the loneliness that our separation had brought, Dave ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd, and by the time he graduated high school, he had gotten involved with the gangstar through his friends. Dave didn't dislike the world he found himself in, as it was more humane than he had imagined, but he felt hesitant to visit our family, walking an outlaw's path. "I've always been worried that I'd be a disappointment. My childhood hero was a treasure to me, and I was scared that I'd somehow tarnish what I am now. But today, I just happened to pass by and couldn't help stopping in," he said. Despite his tough appearance, Dave looked incredibly anxious and somehow smaller. The world Dave spoke of felt so far removed from my life as an ordinary college student. I had no idea what to say to him. Though we're both 22, it's clear we've walked entirely different paths to get here today. "What are you talking about?" That was Mom's voice. At her words, Dave looked up at her. "You chose your own path, right? If you believe in it, there's no need to feel guilty." Saying this, Mom tightly grasped Dave's hand. "And didn't I tell you before? No matter what happens, we are waiting for you. As long as you are you, we will always be family." Mom said this in the same gentle voice she had always used. Hearing her words, Dave, who had been looking down, began to shake his shoulders, indicating he was probably crying. Seeing this, I felt like I was about to cry too. Despite his seemingly intimidating appearance, Dave must have carried a lot of burdens alone. "Welcome back, Dave." I said this and gently placed my hand on Dave's shoulder. Despite it being 15 years since we last spent time together, the warmth between us was palpable. Then, another 5 years passed. At 27, I recently married a woman I met at work, and we are expecting a child in 6 months. We're expecting a child in 6 months. And Dave, it seems, turned his life around soon after that day, starting work as a civil construction worker, just like his father had done. He got married 2 years ago when his first child was born, and now he is blessed with a lovely 2-year-old daughter and a newborn baby, just 2 months old. Now living in the same county, we gather at my parents' house for holidays like Open and New Year's, enjoying a close family bond. Dave, in a way, is a role model for me as a father, despite his tough and intimidating appearance. He's all smiles and tenderness in front of his children. I often wonder if I'll be the same way, watching him with admiration. Mom always says, "I'm so happy to have so many grandkids. I could never have made her this happy all by myself." Absolutely. Meeting Dave definitely changed our family. To me, he's like a best friend, a brother, truly an invaluable member of our family. We may not say it out loud, but I hope Dave feels the same way about us. Our family wants to continue sharing these small joys together, turning them into great happiness. That's what I believe. I'm Jake. I'm 27 years old and in my 5th year at the company. I'm single. I work for a company that supplies parts to major corporations. At work, I'm in charge of office tasks in the sales department. I was promoted to a senior position 2 years ago. My subordinates are all contract employees, so overtime is not an option for them. The overflow inevitably becomes my responsibility. As a result, I'm always busy, and the only days I can leave work without working overtime are the first few days of the month. Otherwise, overtime is a must. There have been times, like at the end of the month or quarter, when I've had to pull all-nighters. My rental apartment is located about an hour away from the downtown office, in the suburbs. I prefer waking up to the chirping of birds rather than the noise of cars. This was a choice prioritizing living environment over convenience. Still, there are times, especially when I'm tired from work, when I wish I could get home quicker. Today, like many others, I worked late. It took me an hour to get to the nearest station. At this hour, there were a few people getting official. Among the sparse crowd, I saw a couple arguing. A woman broke free from a man gripping her bag and ran away, with the man seemingly chasing after her. I guess they're full of energy, maybe having a lover's quarrel, I thought absent-mindedly as I watched. Thinking it's too much trouble to eat at this hour, I stopped by my usual supermarket and bought a discounted deli and a beer with a half-price sticker. I trudged home from the bright station square, passing the supermarket. The white lights of the street lamps along the road seemed to guide me home like runway lights. I pushed my exhausted body forward on my way home. Suddenly, I saw a woman staggering ahead with an unsteady gait. I wonder if she's drunk. I hesitated between keeping my distance and overtaking her, but she was walking quite slowly. As I got closer, the distance between us narrowed. Given the pace, I decided to overtake her. As I got closer to the woman, her appearance became clearer. She was stumbling, dragging her left foot. Her clothes were covered in mud, especially on the left side. Her hair, about shoulder length, was disheveled. It was quite an unusual sight. Moreover, on closer inspection, she was barefoot. It was increasingly bizarre. Well, that's pretty sad, but doesn't she have someone with her, like the person she was drinking with, to take care of her? Maybe I should say something. With that thought, I approached and spoke to her. "Excuse me." Before I could finish, the woman collapsed to her knees. Startled, I instinctively caught her as she fell and called out to her. Are you okay?" She seemed unconscious, but she was breathing. I couldn't move, holding her in both arms. I shouldn't move her in this situation, right? Information I'd heard somewhere flashed through my mind, leaving me unable to move. Having no other choice, I called for help. "Excuse me, is anyone there? Someone, please. We need an ambulance." Despite the late hour, residents who heard my voice came out. Everyone looked on with curious faces. Oh dear, are you okay? Is she your girlfriend? What happened?" A lady in her nightwear approached me to talk. "No, I don't know her. She was walking ahead of me, then suddenly collapsed. Could someone please call an ambulance?" A man, who seemed to be the lady's husband, said, "All right, I'll make the call," and went back inside his house. Meanwhile, the lady kept staring at me. "Aren't you the guy who always buys half-price delis at the supermarket?" Oh, yes, that's me. I bought one today too. I'm single, so." Upon closer inspection, I recognized her too. You're the cashier at the supermarket." Yes, I remember you because you always buy the half-priced ones." As I was talking to the cashier lady, I could hear the sound of a siren in the distance. It seemed like the ambulance had arrived. The ambulance stopped, and the paramedics quickly got out, assessed the woman's condition, and acted swiftly. Soon, the woman was taken into the ambulance. In the moment the paramedic asked, "Is there anyone who can accompany her?" everyone's gaze turned towards me. Me, really, I thought, but I was indeed the only one who could explain the situation. So, I got into the ambulance and ended up going to the hospital with her. At the hospital, I explained the situation to the doctor. The woman had nothing to identify her, and they asked me, but I had no idea who she was. We had no choice but to wait until she regained consciousness. According to the doctor, she was not in a life-threatening condition, but her left leg appeared to be fractured. There was no need for me to stay at the moment, but the police would be involved later, and I would be questioned again. I left my contact information and decided to go home. Since I was quite far from home, I called a taxi to return. It was a costly expense. When I got home and changed, I felt a wave of fatigue hit me. Knowing I had to go to work the next day, I heated the deli, took a shower, opened a beer, gobbled down the food, and got into bed. Just as I was about to relax in bed, the phone rang. It was the police. I explained the situation just like at the hospital, stating I didn't know the woman or her identity. They understood for the time being, but said they would contact me again later. Looking at the clock, it was past 2 a.m. What a long day. I forced my eyes shut, trying to sleep, but I could hardly get any rest. The next day, I miraculously found a seat on the train to work. I managed to get a little sleep, which was a relief. Blending into the crowd as usual, I headed to work. It was a day like any other, as if yesterday's incident never happened. It's amazing how such a significant personal event can have no impact on the world. With that thought, I arrived at the office and greeted everyone with a forced good morning. After the morning meeting, I started my usual work. Another day of the same old routine began. Or so I thought. After finishing a task, I looked around and noticed that my boss, Tom, and the section chief, Ken, were not at their desks. Did a sudden meeting start? Eventually, Tom came back. Instead of going to his own desk, he came straight to mine. Why? As I was wondering, he suddenly patted me on the shoulder. This is the shoulder pat, a sign of being fired. My heart sank in an instant. You did well. Surprisingly, Tom was smiling. Ken, who arrived later, was also looking over with a smile. Yes, what's this about? I asked tentatively, forcing a nervous smile. Tom continued with a grin. Actually, We got a call from the president of our client company, Mr. Smith. He said you helped his daughter last night. That woman was President Smith's daughter from the company, I exclaimed in my mind. No, I just called an ambulance for a woman who collapsed near my home on my way back last night. I explained briefly to Tom. This afternoon, President Smith is coming to meet our President Williams. He wants you to be there too, so please make yourself available. I'm counting on you. Yes, I understand. This situation seems to be getting more serious. What's going to happen to me? As scheduled, President Williams returned in the afternoon. Soon after, President Smith also arrived at our office. Escorted by Tom and Ken, I headed to the president's office. Excuse me, I've brought Jake from the sales department. Oh, I've been waiting. Come in. President Williams's voice came from inside the room. I started to feel nervous. Tom opened the door, and we entered the president's office. Sitting on the guest sofa, facing our President Williams, was President Smith, with a woman beside him who seemed to be his wife. Sorry to keep you waiting. This is Jake, the chief of our sales department. Nice to meet you. I am Jake, the chief of the sales department, I said. When I raised my head, President Smith and his wife stood up and came over to me. So you are Jake. I'm Smith. This is my wife. She wanted to meet you too. Thank you so much for helping our daughter yesterday. Jake, thank you very much for helping our daughter. We really appreciate it. President Smith firmly grasped my right hand with both of his and shook it vigorously. His wife showed respect, with a polite nod and smile. Let's calm down. Sit down and let's talk over some coffee. President Williams intervened, and they returned to their seats. Jake, the discussion from here on is about a private matter of President Smith, so I would like it to be off the record. Is that okay? President Williams looked at me meaningfully. Is it all right for me to be privy to such a discussion? President Smith said. I went to the police today about yesterday's incident, and they said we needed your cooperation. So I have the approval of our president here. Understood. If I can help you, I'm at your service, President Smith. Thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. President Smith thanked me. Shortly after, the secretary brought in coffee. The secretary left, and I waited a bit nervously for President Smith to start talking. After taking a sip of coffee, President Smith began. Actually, my daughter, Emily, is a 21-year-old university student. Recently, she started experiencing stalking. I was shocked by this unexpected revelation. I remembered Emily's appearance from yesterday. Our home is in the suburbs, and Emily's university is in this city. Turns out, President Smith's home was quite close to mine. She is in her third year now and became busy with late returns due to being part of the festival committee. President Smith sighed and took another sip of his coffee. She hasn't been coming home for a few days. We checked with all her close friends and relatives, but she was nowhere to be found. We were about to file a missing person report with the police yesterday if she didn't return. President Smith placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. Then yesterday, we got a call from Central Hospital saying that our daughter was brought in by ambulance. We rushed to the hospital immediately. When we got there, she was asleep under anesthesia. Seeing her in bandages and in pain, I couldn't stop my tears. President Smith wiped his tears. His wife also brought a handkerchief to her eyes. After calming down, her doctor at the hospital showed us your business card, Jake, and told us you were the one who helped our daughter and brought her to the hospital. Seeing it was an employee from your company, I was surprised. I had to call your president first thing this morning to talk about you. I just had to express my gratitude in person. My daughter also wants to thank you. That's the situation, Jake. As a company and personally, I owe a debt to President Smith. I want you to help him out as much as you can. I'm asking you to. The president looked at Tom and Ken while saying, I'd like to assign Jake exclusively to this matter for a while. Can anyone in the sales department take over his current tasks? Tom and Ken exchanged glances. Tom answered. Jake's current duties involve compiling sales figures from the sales department, organizing reports, and creating monthly and quarterly sales strategy documents based on the analysis. Unfortunately, there's no one else but Jake who can handle these tasks. I see. So you both have experience with these tasks from your time as chiefs? The president asked Tom with a smile. Well, in my time, we didn't have computers. That's right. Ken was the chief until 2 years ago, so he should be more than capable. Tom, that's true, but I'm already swamped with my current role as section chief. Ken was desperate. I see. Then it's a presidential order. From today, Jake will be appointed as the chief secretary to the president. I will be his direct superior. Tom and Ken, please take over Jake's current tasks. President Williams looked at me and said, I'm sorry for the sudden change, Jake. You're free to come to the office or work from home. I'll take responsibility for your actions. Thank you in advance. Yes, I accept with gratitude. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I thought I'd manage somehow. President Williams, I'm sorry for involving our company in my family's problems. What are you saying? It's like a child doing a favor for a parent who has been kind to them. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much. President Williams and President Smith shook hands firmly. Tom and Ken stood by, looking dejected. Tom, Ken, sorry, I apologized in my mind. I became the talk of the company. The story of me saving the daughter of President Williams spread, and I was treated like a hero. This is an afterthought, but Tom and Ken, who took over my tasks, were surprised by the workload and reevaluated my abilities, leading to a significant increase in their respect for me. As the newly appointed chief secretary, a position that hadn't previously existed, I naturally had no specific duties. I used my free time to visit the daughter at the hospital. The first visit was nerve-wracking. I wasn't sure what to talk about with a young woman, especially one who's a university student. I checked the nameplate on the hospital room and knocked. This is a president's daughter. Her room was a private one. Come in, a voice replied. Excuse me, I said, entering. It was the lady's voice I heard. As I entered, I greeted. My name is Jake from Company ABC. Today, I've come to visit Miss Emily. Oh my, Emily, this is Jake, your benefactor. The lady introduced me to her. Oh no, I'm embarrassed to be seen like this. I heard Emily's voice from behind the curtain. Her voice sounded lovely. What are you saying? Come on, please sit here. The lady opened a curtain and offered me a chair. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I couldn't come to greet you sooner. I greeted her, and when I looked up, only her eyes were visible above the blanket. What's with that attitude? It's rude to him. Chided by the lady, Emily showed her face from under the blanket. Hello, Jake. I'm Emily. Thank you so much for helping me when I collapsed the other day, and I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble because of me. Emily sat up halfway in bed and greeted me. She seemed to be a well-mannered young lady. It was the first time I had a good look at Emily's face. That night, it was dark, and she was dirty, so I didn't remember her well, but in the light, she was quite a beauty with big, round eyes. Her semi-long hair was tied back in a braid, probably because she was in the hospital. This made her look like a high school student. I was so captivated by her beauty that I stared blankly. Jake, is something the matter? The lady asked, noticing my lack of reaction. No, sorry. You're just so beautiful. I couldn't help but stare. Silly me, letting my inner thoughts slip out. Oh, you're quite the charmer. The lady laughed. Thank you. Emily's face turned bright red. As for me, my mind was a complete blank. At first, the visit was like this, but thanks to the lady's consideration, we enjoyed a pleasant conversation. Emily had been scared and agitated immediately after being hospitalized, but now she seemed much calmer. My visit was allowed because she had regained her composure. During our conversation, I discovered that Emily attended my alma mater, which was a pleasant surprise and led to a lively discussion. When it was time to leave, Emily asked, "Jake, will you come again? You will visit me, won't you?" Emily's mother escorted me to the door. She said, since her hospitalization, Emily had been so withdrawn, not responding to anyone. But seeing her laugh and talk so much today was a first. Could you please visit again? Of course, Emily is my junior at university, after all. I will definitely visit again. Please take care. Later, there were several inquiries from the police. They asked if I had noticed any suspicious individuals nearby. That reminded me of the couple arguing at the station, which I mentioned to them. The couple might be related to the case, the officer said, interested in my recollection. According to the police, she dreaded being stalked on her way home, so she stayed at an internet cafe. Exhausted and feeling helpless, she decided to return home. On the train, she encountered her stalker and fled from the station, but the stalker pursued her. Panicked, she ran into a dark area and wildly dashed through a field's bushes. She eventually fell into an irrigation channel and injured herself. She also lost her bag. The irrigation channel provided a hiding spot, allowing her to ultimately escape. After hiding for a while, she thought it was safe to return home. Disoriented and in pain from her injuries, she walked aimlessly until she lost consciousness. Later, Emily's recovery went well, and she was soon able to leave the hospital for home care. Thus, the visit would be to her house. Her home means the residence of Mr. Smith, the president of the company. When I offered to visit, I was invited to dinner instead. The prospect of visiting her home felt far more daunting than going to the hospital. With determination, I went to visit. "Welcome. We have prepared dinner for you, so please stay and eat with us." The lady of the house greeted me with a smile. "Thank you for having me. I'll gladly accept your kind offer today," I replied. I was comforted by her smile. The president's house was impressively large and overwhelming. A spacious living room with hardwood floors, where I was led, seemed to be the heart of the house. Emily appeared in a wheelchair. "Jake, it's been a while," she greeted. "Emily, I'm sorry for not visiting sooner," I apologized. Emily had returned to a semi-long hairstyle. Personally, I thought it suited her age better and looked quite cute. President Smith was at home and emerged from the back. "Hi, Jake. Thanks for coming on your day official." "Oh, President Smith, thank you for inviting me to dinner today. I will take you at your word." "Well, it's my wife's cooking. Please enjoy. And, since it's a day off and we're informal, please don't call me President. It doesn't feel like a break," he requested. "Then, how should I address you?" I wondered. "Well, Dad would be," he jokingly hinted, his face turning red. "No, that's a bit much. How about Kevin?" I suggested. "Well, that seems appropriate." Kevin was looking slightly disappointed. The dinner prepared by his wife was delicious. "How do you like it? Is it to your taste?" she asked. "Everything's great. This vegetable and chicken stew is exceptional. As a single guy, my meals are pretty dismal, so I'm quite envious of you, Kevin," I complimented. "Oh, that's nice to hear. Neither my husband nor daughter ever say it's delicious." She is puffing her cheeks in mock annoyance. "The vegetables are delicious, aren't they? They're homegrown by my cousin just over there," Kevin proudly said, slightly tipsy from his beer. "I used to play at my uncle's place as a kid. It was fun." Emily is smiling too. Enjoying a meal with a smiling family made me think about the joy of family. Family is really something special. I need to find a wife soon. I blurted out, perhaps a bit drunk. Awkward silence. Emily suddenly froze at my remark. Well, Jake, let's have another drink. How about some wine I received recently? Kevin suggested. After finishing the beer he poured, he offered me more. I enjoy drinking, but didn't want to overdo it. Dad, don't drink too much. Jake has work, so let's keep it moderate, Emily cautioned. He's just happy to have someone to drink with, right, Kevin? His wife smiled at Kevin while clearing the empty plates. I had a wonderful time and decided to leave. She packed some stew in a container for me to take home. Feeling angry at the stalker who threatened this happy home, I wanted to protect their happiness. The investigation into the stalker was proving difficult, with little information and no leads to follow. Later, the police informed us that Emily's bag had been found. I accompanied Emily to the police station, where it was confirmed to be hers. According to the police, there were blood stains on the brand logo's metal part. The blood wasn't Emily's, it was likely the perpetrator's. It seemed the stalker had injured his hand. Looking at the bag, I thought, if someone got cut by this mark, it must be a deep wound. Then one day, at the entrance of my usual supermarket, I ran into the cashier lady, busy cleaning. "Oh, Jake, are you here for the half-price stickers again today?" she asked. Since that incident, I had become friendly with the cashier lady. Today's target is the croquettes. They had a potato sale last week, so there should be leftover croquettes coming out today. The cashier lady grinned and gave me a thumbs up. After chatting for a bit, I browsed through the supermarket. In the deli section, I was torn between croquettes and fried chicken. As I was deciding, I heard a tisk sound from behind and saw a man reaching for the fried chicken. Sorry. I hastily moved aside. The man, looking rather unfriendly, glanced at me, grabbed the deli, and walked away. That's when I noticed a significant scar on the back of his hand. Could that scar be from Emily's bag's clasp? I wondered. After he paid at the cashier lady's register and left, I asked her, "Did you see that man's hand injury?" "Oh, yes. I've seen him around quite often. He used to have a bandage on his hand for a while, but not today. He works as a part-time delivery guy for a food service. He's delivered here a few times," she explained. So, he could have seen inside homes during deliveries. A piece of the puzzle clicked. I felt a flicker of hope in the dark. I invited Emily to come shopping at the supermarket a few times. Moving with crutches was hard for her, but she seemed to enjoy the rare outings. Her smile was always lovely. After repeating these visits for a few days, the man with the scar finally appeared. I quickly hid and peeked out. "Emily, do you recognize that man?" She clung to my arm. "That's the Manuel, the stalker who's been following me," she whispered. I immediately called the police. After explaining the situation, they waited at the supermarket entrance. Emily identified him, and the police apprehended him. He was indeed the stalker. He had fallen in love with Emily at first sight during a delivery to her home. After that, it had become increasingly obsessed. At least now, Emily was safe. Having regained her freedom, Emily invited me to her school festival. It was nostalgic returning to my alma mater. When introducing me to her friends, she jokingly called me my bodyguard, and her friends spontaneously burst into a Whitney Houston song. I sent my support to these endearing juniors. They would someday experience the bittersweetness of working life. I reported the resolution of the case to President Smith and Williams. President Smith was very grateful. "Jake, you're exceptionally capable, with a strong sense of responsibility and perseverance in achieving goals. I'd love to have someone like you at our company," he praised, making me blush. Oddly, President Williams gave me a monetary gift. I decided to share it with Tom and Ken, who had covered for me at work. Later, A party was held at the Smith residence. It was a barbecue gathering for everyone involved. Throughout the event, I received many thanks from President Smith and his wife. Emily, now on her feet, was happily entertaining the guests. As the party was winding down, President Smith called me over to his table. He offered me a glass of wine, which I accepted. I've grown quite fond of you through this incident. You helped my wife and Emily. I envy your company's president for having you. I'm considering how we might work together, he said. What do you mean? I asked, puzzled. Just then, Emily came over. Dad, I brought some more drinks, she said with her bright smile. Her smile was wonderful. Seeing it made all the effort worth it. Emily, can I talk to you for a moment? What is it, Dad? She replied. President Smith called Emily over. I'll get straight to the point, Jake. I was wondering if you would marry Emily, he said. Whoa, I accidentally spat out the sake I was sipping. Emily was frozen in shock. President Smith, that's a pretty heavy joke, I managed to say. It's no joke. I wouldn't choose my daughter's partner lightly. Jake, I believe you are worthy of her. After witnessing your actions, I've come to trust you with not only Emily, but also my business someday. Emily's face turned bright red. Dad, what are you saying so suddenly? She stammered. Truthfully, I had feelings for Emily. But accepting such a proposal too quickly might seem like I was after her family's wealth. I needed to tell Emily how I had felt about her for a long time. Besides, resolving the case meant my connection with Emily might come to an end. I couldn't bear that thought. So, I half-desperately spoke to President Smith. President Smith, I'm grateful for your words. I like Emily very much so. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. However, accepting this offer too lightly would be disrespectful to Emily, as if I'm marrying her for status or wealth, I explained. President Smith stared into my eyes intensely. It almost overwhelmed me, so I downed the sake in front of me in one gulp. If Emily accepts my confession, then I will consider your offer, I said. I turned to Emily. Emily, from the moment I met you in that hospital, I fell for you, so I'm confessing now. I'm a simple man, but I want to protect you forever. Will you go out with me? Will you give me your life to cherish? I might make you cry, but I'll never let you suffer. Please. With that, I extended my right hand to her. Closing my eyes, I waited. After what seemed an eternity, my hand was enveloped by her small, warm hand. When I opened my eyes, there was Emily, her eyes brimming with tears. She jumped into my arms. You have to take responsibility for making me feel this way. If you're okay with someone like me, please be with me forever, she said. I embraced Emily tightly. Unbeknownst to us, everyone had formed a circle around us. President Smith began clapping slowly. Soon, the entire crowd joined in applause. Enveloped in applause, I thought, what have I done? What now? I fainted. Fast forward a few years. Surrounded by well-wishers, Emily and I were at the peak of happiness. Today was our wedding day. I couldn't help but be captivated by Emily in her white wedding dress. President Smith, in tears, was being comforted by his wife. From now on, I would call them father-in-law and mother-in-law. After that party proposal, I thought I had it all figured out, but the combination of alcohol and nerves caused me to pass out. I still get teased about that to this day. But I remember every word of my confession. Emily, do you remember what I said at the party? I forgot, she teased. Really? Yes, so I want you to say it again. I'll make sure you don't make any mistakes. You remember, don't you? Haha. Emily's smile today. The most beautiful I've ever seen. Determined to keep her smiling forever, I vowed to protect Emily for the rest of my life. You and your wife can just sit on the floor, right? Mike, the department head, said with a malicious grin. Today is the company's 30th anniversary party. It's astonishing that he could say such a thing at such a significant event. Moreover, it's the first time he meets my wife, Linda. Normally, he'd be a bit more considerate. As I seethed internally, Jessica, the president's daughter, took an even more surprising action. Out of nowhere, she brought over a flattened cardboard box and told us, "Use this." The cardboard dropped to the floor, kicking up dust. "Shall we go home?" I said to Linda. "Yes, let's," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. And just as we got bruised, we were about to leave the venue. My name is John. I'm 40 years old. I live a modest but happy life with my same-aged wife, Linda, and our middle school-aged daughter, Anna. Linda and I got married when we were both 25, but our relationship dates back to high school. Back then, we were just friends, but over time, through many ups and downs, we gradually deepened our relationship and came to recognize each other as partners. Having been together for so long, we're not just a married couple but also best friends. We are able to discuss anything. That's why, in our younger days, we often ended up arguing over things we wanted to say to each other. But the quarrels between us were like brief showers. Just as the saying goes, after the rain, the ground hardens. Our anger would naturally dry up and vanish after a while, leaving only our affection for each other. And I always felt like we understood each other better than before the quarrel. Since having Anna, our arguments have significantly decreased. The saying "children are a bond" truly resonates with me. It's not that we consciously decided to avoid arguments for Anna's sake, but we naturally started to feel less irritated with each other. We want to continue living happily as a family of 3. With this hope in my heart, I commute between work and home every day. Today, like every other day, I was jostled in a crowded train on my way to work. The morning rush is a daily ordeal, but when I think about working for my family, it doesn't seem so bad. I'm sure everyone on this train is working hard for something. Thinking this way makes even the harsh conditions of a crowded train feel meaningful. And what awaited me at work was a pile of menial tasks. Though blessed with a loving family, I'm facing some issues at work. This company, employing 2,000 people, is a successful enterprise that has continued to grow since its establishment 30 years ago. I joined this company about a year ago. Until then, I had been working for a small, family-run business, which went bankrupt due to financial difficulties. In these times, when small businesses are failing one after another due to the bleak economy, becoming unemployed suddenly isn't rare, but I never thought it would happen to me. When it did, my first thought was of my family. After I lost my job, Linda took on several part-time jobs to support us until I found new employment. While I was grateful for her support, finding a new job wasn't easy for someone in their late 30s who had only ever worked in small companies. At one point, I even considered asking Linda to take Anna and move back to her parents' house. Linda's parents are wealthy, so it seemed like it might be better for them without me. I wondered if they would be happier if she divorced me. However, when Linda learned of my thoughts, she was angrier at me than ever. "Don't decide our happiness," she exclaimed. I was taken aback by her unexpected anger. But then she softened. "We're a family of 3. That's what makes us happy. If you're in trouble, I'll support you no matter what. So don't ever talk about splitting up again." Linda, with her gentle face, seemed a bit sad too. I felt deeply ashamed for having caused her such sorrow and started to take steps towards finding a new job. It was when I was approached by Mr. Thompson, the president of my current company. He was a close friend of my father since college and seemed to have kept an eye on me even after my father's passing. Knowing that the company I had worked for went bankrupt, he invited me to join his company. For me, this was an opportunity I hadn't even dared to hope for, to land a job again, and even at a large corporation, so I immediately accepted the offer. But soon I realized that the large corporations have high thresholds. Unlike me, who started working right after high school due to the loss of my father, the main provider, everyone else had higher education. They also had high pride and a stoic nature, living for their work. Among them, Mike, an elite department head in his early 30s, was particularly harsh on me, a man without a degree, giving me only menial tasks. I don't know how a middle-aged man with a low education managed to get into this company, but don't get in our way, he said on my first day. Since it was a secret that I was invited by President Thompson to join this company, I just silently agreed with understood. Although it was frustrating, I reminded myself that getting caught up in such petty pride was pointless. I decided to work hard for the sake of my family. However, Mike's treatment of me worsened day by day. No matter what I did, he complained, and he didn't even call me by my name but by a Johnny. "Hey, Johnny, copy these documents for everyone before I get back from lunch. Oh, and make me a hot coffee when I return," he'd say. "Yes, sir, as you wish," I responded. This response was also dictated by Mike's orders. I wasn't even allowed to answer in my own words. At first, it was embarrassing and unpleasant, but I got used to it after a while, and I naturally started calling him sir like a butler. Getting used to it is terrifying, but also a survival skill. No matter how unpleasant things were at work, seeing Linda and Anna's faces at home made everything worthwhile. Gradually, I even started thinking of Mike's harassment as something I endured for my family. Just as I was getting used to Mike, a new person appeared in my life. Jessica, Mr. Thompson's daughter. Apparently, she was dating Mike and started showing up in our department more often. And Jessica, the president's youngest daughter, also started calling me by the Johnny every time she saw me. Being called that by the woman in her early 30s, the youngest daughter of the president, was mentally challenging, but given her status, she was even more untouchable than Mike. Of course, I couldn't say I disliked it, so every time I was called by the Johnny, I responded with a smile. And in my heart, I reminded myself it was all for my family. For my family's sake, I was prepared to laugh off any unpleasant feelings, no matter what. Jessica and I are getting married. We were going to announce it at the company's upcoming anniversary party, but I thought I'd tell you specially. So, you had better prepare a gift," Mike said. Jessica chimed in with a laugh. "Don't make Johnny celebrate for us. That's just sad. You need to be happy to celebrate others, and he's definitely not happy. You can tell just by looking at his face." I blurted out, "That's not true. I have a loving family, and I'm perfectly happy." I found myself shouting this more desperately than I intended. Seeing my reaction, the two of them looked at each other and burst into laughter. "What are you talking about with that tearful face, man? You don't love your family. You just have to think you do to bear being ridiculed at work every day," Mike said. Hearing his words, I felt my heart racing. I wonder what your beloved family would say if they saw how you're at work. If it were me, I'd feel sorry and think it's best to quickly divorce such a pathetic, unreliable husband and find someone else," Jessica said, then took Mike's arm. The two of them leaned close to each other, laughing mockingly as they walked away. Although their words left me shattered inside, the images of Linda and Anna still came to mind. Normally, I'd hurry home eager to see Linda and Anna, but that day, my steps were heavy. I took a moment to compose myself in front of the door so my family wouldn't notice my feelings, then opened it. Anna ran up to me with a smile, saying, "Welcome home." But the moment she saw my face, she exclaimed in surprise, "Dad, you are smiling so much. Did something fun happen?" Anna looked a bit anxious despite her words, as if my forced smile had come across as unnatural. It seems I was trying so hard not to let my family realize what was in my heart that I ended up forcing a smile, resulting in an unnatural-looking laugh. Naturally, Linda also noticed and asked with a serious look, "Did something happen at work?" I wanted to reassure them by saying, "It's okay, it's nothing, but..." "What's wrong? Are you okay, Dad?" Anna looked at me, startled. Linda looked at me with a surprised expression. Just then, their faces started to blur in front of me. I realized I was crying. Linda gave me a gentle smile. "Can you tell me what happened at work? I'm on your side. You can trust me, okay?" Encouraged by her words, I opened up about everything I'd been enduring from Mike and Jessica. Linda listened silently and thanked me for sharing at the end. Talking to her lightened my heart, and I was able to smile genuinely again. "I'm glad you're back to your usual self." Seeing Anna looking happy, I apologized her sorry for making you worry. "You don't have to apologize. Worrying isn't bad. It shows that the person is trying hard, but don't overdo it, okay? You have to take it easy too," she advised. Her words surprised me. When had Anna become so mature? Thanks to my wife and daughter, I was able to recognize my difficulties and went to work the next day with a clear mind. "Hey, Johnny, take out the trash. The bin is full." You might not care, being a high school graduate and odd job man, but I'm busy preparing for the anniversary party. Don't bother me, Mike barked. I responded with a smile. "Understood, Mike, but my name is John, not Johnny." Mike glared at me for a moment, probably too busy with the party preparations to argue, and left the office without another word. Standing up for myself felt refreshing, and I immediately thought of Linda and Anna. Yes, it's because of them that I can be strong. I decided to stop sacrificing myself for my family's sake. Maintaining my own pride and doing my job well is what truly benefits my family. And the anniversary party wasn't unrelated to me. I was personally invited by Mr. Thompson. Moreover, he invited Linda as well. John is like a son to me, so I'm grateful to Linda for supporting you as a wife. The party is also a way to express my gratitude, so I hope you both enjoy it," he said. In fact, our marriage was possible thanks to Mr. Thompson, who mediated between our families. After my father's death, I started working immediately after high school to support my frail mother. Linda's parents were initially hesitant about letting their daughter marry someone like me. I understood their perspective. Naturally, they didn't want their well-cared-for daughter to face hardships. I was ready to give up if her parents disapproved. However, Linda insisted on not leaving me, straining her relationship with her parents due to our marriage discussions. Feeling responsible yet helpless, Mr. Thompson extended his support. "John is like a son to me. Please allow him to marry Linda. I vouch for his character." He persuaded Linda's parents by visiting them personally. His influential words, coming from a well-respected figure, had a profound effect. Linda's parents not only approved our marriage but also offered to pay for the wedding. Linda wasn't pleased with her parents' sudden change of attitude, but I was genuinely happy to have their blessing. "You're the world's biggest softie. That's one of your good points, but sometimes you need to stand up for yourself," I responded. "You should be more grateful to your parents. They won't be around forever. We should avoid conflicts as much as possible." Hearing us, Mr. Thompson smiled and said, "You two really get along well. I'm glad I could help bring you together." We looked at each other and felt a bit embarrassed. I remember that moment. We truly owe a lot to Mr. Thompson. And then, the day of the company's 30th anniversary celebration came. Considering Anna is still in middle school, we decided to leave her with Linda's parents and headed to the venue. It had been a while since we went out, just the two of us. Upon arriving at the party venue, Linda seemed a bit nervous in the festive atmosphere. But then again, she comes from a good family, so this wasn't her first time in such a setting. I was more worried about feeling out of place myself. And there was something else on my mind. As expected, Mike and Jessica spotted us at the venue and approached us with a change of expression. What is a high school graduate who was hired midway through his career even invited here? Is this some kind of mistake by the HR department? It must be some kind of error. It's just absurd. I bet there isn't even a seat reserved for you. Jessica sneered with a mean look. Mike looked at me with a malicious grin. You and your wife can just sit on the floor, right? I couldn't believe he could say such a thing on such a grand occasion. Especially since it was Linda's first time meeting them. Normally, I would expect them a bit of courtesy. As I seethed internally, Jessica took an even more shocking action. Out of nowhere, she brought over a flattened cardboard box and said to us, "Use this." The cardboard hit the floor, kicking up dust, and I couldn't help but cough. Jessica pointed and laughed at me. I was willing to forgive her because she's Mr. Thompson's daughter, but this was too much. Even if they didn't know about my relationship with Mr. Thompson, this was too harsh. Linda watched the entire exchange silently with a smile, but then she opened her mouth to speak. She knew about the treatment from Mike, and she was a strong-willed person. That's why I was nervous that she might retort. But Linda gracefully greeted with a calm expression. "I'm sorry for the late introduction. I've heard so much about how Mike has been taking care of my husband." Mike glared at Linda with a spiteful look. "It's nothing like that. I'm sorry to say he's been stuck doing menial tasks every day. But don't worry. He's getting paid well enough for a janitor, ma'am." Jessica laughed at Mike's words. "Johnny here goes about his day being mocked for the sake of his beloved family, all the while smiling. It's a tearjerker, really. But I'm amazed you dared to show up here. Don't you feel out of place?" To speak so heartlessly even to Linda. I glanced at Linda, being worried about how she was taking this. Her profile was dignified, revealing her refined upbringing. At first glance, it seemed as if the cruel words hadn't affected her at all. However, I noticed a slight tremble in her lips. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or sadness, but it was the first time I had seen Linda like this. Instinctively, I placed my hand on her back and suggested, "Shall we go?" As if waiting for those words, she turned to me with her eyes brimming with tears and quietly agreed, "Yes, let's." She must have been holding back her feelings, not wanting to cause a scene, especially for my sake. Leaving was the best thing I could do for her. As we were about to leave, arm in arm, we were called and stopped. It was Mike, who had chased after us, his earlier smugness replaced by a pale face. "Wait, please come back. Mr. Thompson is asking for you. If you leave now, he said he'd fire me." "Who are you, exactly? What's your relationship with Mr. Thompson?" He gasped for breath, and Linda told Mike at once. "It seems you've finally realized the gravity of your actions. We've already discussed this with Mr. Thompson, but we'll be leaving now. If we do, you'll be fired, right? Then John won't have to suffer anymore." With those words, Linda placed her hand on my arm and urged, "Let's go." She seemed eager to leave this place as soon as possible. I simply nodded in agreement with her, saying, "Yes." "No, wait, please, I'm sorry for everything. And that was all just a joke. I never thought you'd take it seriously," Mike pleaded. Then, Linda suddenly turned around with incredible force. Startled by her sudden movement, I nearly stumbled. "If you really mean to apologize, then don't make excuses," Linda's sharp voice echoed. She seemed truly furious, her face contorted in anger, and even Mike looked intimidated by her intensity. It had been a long time since I saw her like this, when we faced opposition from her parents about our marriage. I was helpless in the face of Linda's genuine anger. Then, Mr. Thompson arrived with Jessica in tow. What Linda is saying is correct. You both should properly apologize to them. Come on, Jessica, apologize. As a parent, I'm deeply ashamed. It seems I've spoiled her too much just because she was born later in my life. Linda's anger seemed to subside with Mr. Thompson's intervention, and her fierce expression quickly faded. I was relieved to see Mr. Thompson handle the situation. Furthermore, it seems you've been disrespectful to John on a regular basis at the company. He's a good person, so it didn't come to light until now. But normally, you could be sued for such behavior. People who can't respect the dignity of others have no place in my company. Mr. Thompson scolded them. Upon hearing this, Mike's head dropped in defeat. Afterward, Mike was demoted to a regular employee. And it is said the talk of Mike's marriage to Jessica also fizzled out. This was because Jessica moved to a distant area where her mother's family home was located. It turns out Mr. Thompson had divorced his wife. Apparently, their relationship had been cold for a long time, and they have stopped even greeting each other at home. The final straw was when his wife was caught embezzling company funds with an accountant she was having an affair with. To take responsibility and make amends, Mr. Thompson felt he had no choice but to divorce her and send her back to her family home. Mr. Thompson confided in me with a look of loneliness. I may have spoken grandly in front of you, but I'm someone who couldn't even manage my own family. In contrast, your family seems genuinely happy. He was indeed a great father. By he, I mean my father. Mr. Thompson and my father had pledged to build a future together as business partners. They met in college, one the son of a political family, and the other a farmer's son from the countryside, and despite their different backgrounds, they became best friends. For Mr. Thompson, who had always been in a competitive environment, my father, with his simple and unpretentious nature, was his first true friend. After graduating, they promised to start a business together. While working for the company for the sake of his family and simultaneously preparing to start his own business, my father got sick. Ultimately, he passed away, leaving my mother and me behind, without fulfilling his promise to Mr. Thompson. He had always felt guilty for taking my father away from us. He said helping me whenever possible was his way of atonement. But I never held any resentment towards Mr. Thompson. I knew my father trusted him until the end. My father regretted not being able to keep his promise with Mr. Thompson on his deathbed. When I told him about this, Mr. Thompson's eyes brimmed with tears as he apologized, saying, "I'm truly sorry." "Don't apologize. You've always said I'm like a son to you. I consider you as a father to me too. Please rely on me from now on," I said. Then, Mr. Thompson thanked me with a gentle smile, saying, "Thank you." It felt familiar, perhaps because it reminded me of my father. Months passed since Mr. Thompson's divorce. Although the relationship with his wife had been cold for a long time, I've heard that late-life divorces can be mentally and physically draining. This is because he has to take on the tasks that the spouse used to handle. Luckily, Mr. Thompson's sister and her husband lived nearby and occasionally checked in on him, but I was also concerned. So, Linda and I decided to regularly visit Mr. Thompson's home with our family, not just to comfort him but to maintain our connection. We'd have barbecues in his yard, and eventually, started bringing friends over, and company employees and neighbors began to join. Thus, Mr. Thompson's home became a hub of social gatherings on weekends. It was then I truly understood the beauty of family. While it was always fun with just Linda, Anna, and me, expanding our social circle as a family made me see a hopeful future. I'm sure my late father would be pleased. Looking up at the blue sky, I felt as if he was watching over our happiness from heaven, smiling gently.